Hello, today I'm going to demo the Orchestrator plugin. The Orchestrator plugin is a plugin in RHDH that enables developers to invoke workflows. The workflow we will demo today called the AAP DB deploy workflow. It contains the following steps. The first step will be launching a software template from RHDH catalog. The software template will create a pet clinic project in one Git repository and another Git repository for the GitOps for the purpose of deploying the application, the built application on OpenShift cluster. The next step will monitor the software template creation. Once the software template is created, the workflow will trigger Ansible Automation Platform job for deploying Postgres on OpenShift in the target namespace in which we would like to deploy the pet clinic application. We will monitor the AAP job until it's completed, and once it's completed successfully, we will monitor the GitHub action of the first GitHub repository that was created and that contains the software for the pet clinic and the source code for the pet clinic application. The GitHub action builds the image and pushes it to Quay repository. We will provide the details for the Quay repository when we fill the parameters of the workflow. Once the GitHub action is completed and the image is pushed successfully to Quay, we can use the workflow to deploy the application on OCP cluster by creating ArgoCD application in the target namespace. During the workflow execution, the workflow sends notifications to the RHDH using the notification plugin. Now let's move to the RHDH. So the notification plugins are here on the left side, and from time to time we will see pop-ups of events, pop-ups of notifications that will indicate on the progress of the workflow itself. The Orchestrator plugin is here on the left side, and we will use the Spring Pet Clinic workflow to start the workflow execution. So let's verify that there are no deployments on the target namespace. During the invocation of the workflow, we should expect to see two deployments here created by the workflow. The first one is the Postgres that will be created by the Ansible job. And the second is the pet clinic that will be deployed by the ArgoCD application and will be configured to use the Postgres deployment. Now let's fill some of all of the required parameters for the workflow to run. We'll start with the GitHub organization in which the software template or the workflow will invoke the software template to create the target repository. We will keep the default naming because they are okay. We select the system that will be associated with the created component to register the project into the Backstage catalog. We will maintain the default parameters for the Java part of the application. The pet clinic is a Spring Boot application, and those values are related to the Maven project and to the Java components of it. We will select GitHub action as the CI method for the workflow, although there is another option to use the tecton. And as the query organization, we will use the orchestrator testing. In the last step, we'll have to specify the job template for deploying the Postgres and the inventory on which nodes to use in order to run the job itself. And as a recipient, we will use the current user that we're logged in with to RHDH, which is the guest user. Once all of the parameters are populated, we can move to the review screen. You can see that each category based on the form itself specifies all of the selected parameters, and let's just confirm them. And we are good to start. So the first part of the workflow will be the creation of the launch of the software template to create the GitHub repositories. In this screen, we can see some of the details, like when the workflow started, its current active status, and some of the variables that contains the input parameters that were used to invoke the software, and other variables that will be populated as the workflow runs. So we can see that we've just received notification, and that notifications tells us about the completion of the first step for creating the software template. That was the one. Sorry, not this one. So that's the one that was just created, and it takes us to the backstage to RHDH catalog, and will point us to the component that represent the created project. So now you can see that the Spring Pet Clinic project was created in the test workflow organization in GitHub, and a GitHub action should be running for building and pushing the image to Quay while the workflow continues running. So the next notification we received is about the completion, the job that completed the creation of the PSQL deployment. So let's see now whether the deployment is there. And you can see that Postgres was created successfully on the target cluster. Now what's left is to wait for the completion of the CI. So for that we can move back to the workflow run, either from this screen, or we can just click on the active. We have a link to the component that we've just watched for it. And in the meantime, we can have a look at the catalog and see that at the moment there is only the Postgres deployment created on the target namespace, but soon enough we will receive notification for the deployment of the application on ArgoCD. Yep, and the workflow was completed. The last notification indicates that it was completed successfully, meaning ArgoCD application was created. So let's go back to the catalog to view the component there with the through the ArgoCD plugin. So you can see that the plugin is synced, but it's still running. So let's go to the ArgoCD application and see its progress. Yep, it's still resources are still being created, and you can watch it here until the Spring pet cleaning deployment will become ready. Yep, and it's ready. So now what it's left is to go and view the route. And voila. Now the Spring pet clinic application using the deployment that was created by Ansible. The resources are registered as component to RHDH catalog. You can view the resources deployed on the cluster from through the Kubernetes plugin as well. And that concludes this demonstration. Behind the scene, the software, the piece of workflow that was used to create the workflow is this one. We used the orchestrator is using the serverless workflow specification and the OpenShift serverless logic operator to write and run the workflows. So basically, the workflow itself contains a list of functions that are being invoked through the various states, and those states define the workflow itself, which is represented as the flowchart, as the diagram on the right side. So the step that we saw, just to conclude, was launching the software template, monitoring to its completion, launching Ansible Automation Platform job for creating the database, watching for its completion, then watching for the GitHub actions run, and when it was completed, we invoked the ArgoCD application and verified that it was created successfully. Then we send the last notification to the notification plugins. I hope you enjoyed the demo.